Next, we're going to hear from Jonathan Hicks.
Thanks, Emily. Emotional. Who knows the hour? And so begin the train trips, the updates, until the baffled doctor knows. Thoughts turn to ashes. The hymn howls up through the hallway stairs. The organ groans, embalmed with blood and air, and the prayers, heavy as the coffin, rise. The earth slips off the face of the shovel. We distribute the heirlooms, rings, watches, cufflinks, memories. Your disembodied voice comes through in messages, saved for 7 days before deletion, and on goes the darkness like a widow's dress. Gone fishing. Work is just an interruption to you. Early echoes of youth surface as I stand on Orlock rocks, hooked to the plunging ocean, reeling in the steaming tides under a sky battleship grey at times. The only thing you'll catch is the last bus back to Bangor, so I cast further out. Tramping back, birds are nesting, and the air is Irish seaweed fresh. Spinner, rod, tackle bag, the lubricated smell of fresh fish slipping back in, still hang from my salty mind. The world has hurled itself away like spray in the wind, and I do not know or care if I feel old or young, climbing among these rocks and inlets. Evening begins to blush. The coastline is sprinkled in summer rain. Wet barley washes my boots, and all the gorse on sunset fire.
Next, we have Brid Gallagher, and she's just finished an MA in poetry.
This is called Half. John McNaughton, a man of noble character, stands accused of the murder of Marianne, the youngest daughter of the most esteemed Knox family of Brehon. Some believe he followed them for love, that his mistress reached above her father back towards him, but he let his thumb out from the gun too soon and hit her through the carriage hood. And there are those who claim his dark revenge was wrought from years of pain. His ardent chase too forceful to refuse, she fled, and in pursuit she cost him half his mind. Regardless of which side prevails, John McNaughton dies today on the rope outside the Lifford jail. The Knox carriage. Still as if trapped in amber, the horse coach chills the children of the town. In detailed recreation, it is shackled just a hand stretch from their seats. And as the guide begins the story of a half-hanged highwayman, another takes their ritual place, tucked in behind the lacquered carriage wheels. The red and tan fixed spokes conceal them whole. The tale unwinds into the ghostly girl, a mere 15, who is said to haunt the room in which this carriage rests. The hidden tour guide screams and shakes the wheel. The stagecoach pitches forward, rattles back in dark retreat. The children wail. They've seen a trapdoor swing beneath the hanged man's feet. This is called Servine. It is clean, like peregrines to dead fawns curl nose to nose, their bodies velvet bags of bones folding to and through each other. The slope of ears tamed back and tucked in tails create a whirl, mirrored over their heads in glass and round the blue enamelled base. What exists in the space between their mouths is merely fiction, one imagined breath placed in the middle. And on the outside, when she shines the vitrine, breathing softly on the curved clear front, a momentary mist appears above them, stopped by the cold dome of their little sleep. It spreads to grey, and with her purple cloth is wiped away.
And our next reader is Stephen Sexton, who has also just completed an MA and is now starting a PhD in creative writing at Queen's.
If, as Nixon would have said, fate had ordained, and Armstrong or Aldrin or both sustained injuries that would have kept them afloat permanently on the sea of tranquility, such that meant they couldn't return from the doldrums of the surface, and the fulcrum balancing human endeavour with disaster sat with slightly less of one over the black weight of the other, and, as per protocol, the lander had left without one or the other of the men on board after a priest, via radio, had commended their souls in the same way that those lost at sea are commended to the deepest of the deep, would there ever have started so much about how the flag flutters. With the slow ripples of the Blue Ridge Mountains softened through her picture window, Anna Anderson sits turning the gold band inches, thumb and index round her finger. With her eyes closed, she tries to remember cordite sneaking around the low ceiling of the basement room. The weight of her clothes like kimberlite hung with a chainmail of diamonds. She strains to remember the flurry of gunshots, echoic bouncing into the darkness of the morning, and the years that follow one such carrom to Charlottesville, Virginia. She does not yet know that the ribbon of intestine she'll have removed in 10 years, glittering with DNA, will close the tunnel she opened in 1922 like a closed mine, and find Anastasia back at the entrance. I'd like to read another one that's in sort of 4 little bits. The poem's called Bodies of Water. The first bit is Canute. Having transported this throne to the trammelled sands at Forney, he sat for his courtiers, mysterious, then suddenly navigable, a vigia on the shoreline, unacknowledged by the undulate southern waters lapping at his feet. 2. Xerxes. In a rage after the storming strait of Hellespont, which is now the Dardanelles, has smashed to smithereens his bridge, supported by flax and papyrus, he decrees that the water will receive 300 lashes. Furthermore, a thorn in his side that it is, fetters will be lowered into it. Afterwards, when the water stings from being branded in his name, and his branders sweat from their irons, his seething head will cool off. Work begins on the second bridge. And 3 is Moses. Passing the cobra of his staff over the Red Sea, compare Reed Sea or Southern Sea, and picking the lock of its currents, the waters swing open like courtyard doors. He leads away from the polemic of the Red Nile. And 4 is Isaac. Flowing east towards Louisiana, the waters once lapping the Red River Delta join the Mississippi. To their surprise, we imagine, the hurricane thundering through Baton Rouge sends the river flowing backwards. They've been talking about you, Dankadori, and while I interpret your centuries-long semaphore from the one of Diana you haven't painted yet, I've watched you. I've watched since you curved your cuticle of light in my eyes. I've smiled as your fine needle strokes have pondered scarlet and vermilion, crimson and burgundy. I've seen your sparkling eyes settle on cara mia carmen and thread it lightly through this cloak you've given me. As my hair settled in plaits, you set it with pearls running a cleft over my ear. I am jeweled all over. You have put rings on my fingers and chains around my wrist, and a bangle circled with onyx that you didn't make but imagine as you have me. You have made me soft with these things, with a metallurgist's curiosity, but I have focused on you defining my face. You have given me a Grecian nose. You have given me vanity and 500 years to explore it. At the word of my once smooth, once sure, flat mouth, you framed a mirror for me to watch. Now you work while you're not here. Your paint goes on in crackling capillaries. My shadowed second face remembers you tenderly inventing 1,000 colours for me. My face in the mirror tries to describe your face. Thank you.
Okay, our next poet has actually like my favorite name ever because Emma Must is the beginning of an imperative sentence. So, looking forward to hearing it.
Thank you, Emily. Wonderful. And the year Neil Armstrong walks on the moon, I'm sitting in a pushchair propelled by my granny, pointing at the fields near her house, yelling, Frisian. And though the bigger world of words lies waiting in the future for me, I know enough about cows to tell there are different types. And there's no point shouting cow if you can be more specific. And though I don't yet know about classifying lunar craters, and Wikipedia has yet to be invented, if I did, I'd be holding forth about the 5 broad categories, from the smaller cup-shaped ones with no central floor, like Albategnius C, to the largest ones like Tycho, with terraced inner walls and central peak formations, and asserting that above a couple of 100 metres in diameter, they are called basins. I'll speak up. And while Neil Armstrong is busy collecting lunar samples and making giant leaps through powdered charcoal and failing to find any evidence of ice, I'm pondering the relative merits of vanilla over strawberry. And if my dad had had a telescope, it might have been focused on the frozen colours of a heavenly object, exploring galaxies, nebulae, dark matter, and many other related astronomical phenomena. And I'll always be thinking of what might be out there, be it seas of crisis or fecundity or alien organisms, and drawing down words to try to make sense. And this poem's called Timing Craters. In 1702, Pierre de la Haya made a curious observation. To predict the duration of a lunar eclipse, you must increase the radius of shadow 1 arc-minute larger than warranted by geometry. The enlargements can be measured through careful timings of craters as they exit and enter the umbra. When we cut through the razor wire and flattened out its sharps with mud, to dance to the fiddles of the tofu love frogs, fueled by gin made red with blackthorn. We had not read the NASA website. We knew nothing of Tycho and Copernicus, the 4 umbral contacts with the moon's limb, or how to factor in the Earth's oblateness. We certainly hadn't heard about Dan John's rule of shadow enlargement. The only shadows were our own, lengthened in the glare of arc lights. That time was still to come when the down would look like the surface of the moon. So this poem is called Cameo. I could begin with the old Italian engravers, outline the signer's painstaking search for the smoothest, flattest piece of shell, closest to the lip, his delineation of its pearly surface into ovals, before the cutter would divide the pieces and the smoother round them further, so the carver might rough out a sketch of his subject matter and get to work, etching through the paler layers of calcium carbonate to reach the brownish base. But this is not the Renaissance, even though these traditional techniques still flourish close to the foot of Mount Vesuvius, centuries after Lorenzo the Magnificent indulged his love of layered sardonyx agate by supping from a Tassa Farnese, and Ferdinand of Aragon entrusted the care of engraving the royal seal to his master carver Battista Taglia. So I'll start instead with a micromotor and various carbide and diamond burrs to get us quickly back to an ugly seashell clamped in the workshop of my memory. I will refine the details later, but it was summer in my grandparents' garden, which stretched away to playing fields, so your eye was always drawn beyond. I had on a summer dress in cream or beige with muted flowers, and a too broad hairband, elasticing my hair so tightly that my face shone out uncertain as a foreign moon. There were 6 of us then, each brightened on account of both the season and my grandmother, and she'd prepared one of her gorgeous salads, speckled with pepper jewels like emeralds or yellow topaz, baby tomato garnets, and amethyst salmon, all of which makes me think now of a multicoloured coral reef. I know from the cameo carving mini tutorial on YouTube that I must be very careful not to overheat the piece or it will crack. But this is what I remember next. A furious row, my mother screaming at my grandfather, her scouring shrieks on this sunny day as inappropriate as winter gales. It was something about money. And I know I must not go too deep at this early stage when I'm just getting a feel for the general outlines and the most prominent design elements, such as arms and drapery. But perhaps it was to distract the rest of us, my father, my brother, my grandmother, me, that I commenced my own commercial argument. I was holding the shell, a present passed on to me by my grandmother from my uncle in Malawi, where he was forwarding freight over meals of spicy goat's eyeballs, or was it testicles, so hot he thought his own would pop. And in the cool of the evening, they'd play bow on a wooden board, hollowed with pits, for grouping cowrie shells as cold as coins. And as I held this remnant of a thing that had once lived, its outer surface rough and pinkish, knobbled into peaks, a little like a circus tent held up by many poles, its molten lip of white enamel pouring over the edges of the orifice, suggestive, I think now, of genitals, I shouted at my brother that it was mine, it was not his, appealing to the adults. I do not recall if they acquiesced. But now, as I have followed the correct procedure, done all the roughing in next to a vacuum table to remove the shell dust from the air, and coated the back of the oval with glue to protect it from stress cracks, then mounted it on a domed wood block with dopping wax. As I have done all this, perhaps I can take up my simple rounds and flats and onglets and start to remove the shiny surface, cut down to the darker material. I wonder if I cannot trace my preference for outright ownership, my suspicion of anything communal, back to that point, having been given something precious that might be about to be taken away. That garden would never hold the six of us again. Meanwhile, from within another layer of memory, undercutting everything, I found my grandmother's second favourite cameo in a jumble of junk on my bedside table, wrapped in cotton wool inside a little box. It has made it here over several seas. Is it too easy to end by polishing it? Perhaps I should slightly dull the subject to make the details that bit more crisp. As I ponder this, I'll gaze at its cinnamon background, wrapped in a golden bezel, bound with wire braids and finished with a clasp. At the profile carved in pale relief, each wave of hair pinned back from her cheek in readiness for summer, a strand of pearls, the moon-white face of a woman smiling.
Okay, we're down to one poet and one musician after all that. Andy.
I'll try to be quick and just read a little cluster of short poems and then one or two other poems. These are all based on a memorial that I'm writing for my grandfather, who I'm named after, but I never knew. He died right before I was born. But I have these cassette tapes where he's telling his whole life story. So I'm kind of interacting with that and writing some poems. So I hope you enjoy these. A herd of deer, Grand Canyon, circa 1931. Back now up across the rush-swept hill, one wave, then another. Tawny surge up tuft slope and across the sun-slant clatter of a hoof over hoof-beat mountain ground. The deer moved like cattle. And we saw it all from our canyon cradle, a view in the steep of morning light. The sun-baked wall cascade, and us all looking up, as if listening to rain. Rome, 1940. This Rome is a seed I cannot split. Stop. Outside the Vatican, two friends left me to hold their navy caps. Stop. I thumbed the fabric lips where each fold passes the other, and two boys in the city flew past me with their kite and its red back against the cross. Stop. A woman was trimming herbs on a small balcony, and beside her a tomato plant hung in her door. Stop. Please tell Mother about the tomato plant in the door. Stop. I knew a man could feel at home at sea, but on the sea, in it, 2 full nights, hanging like a buoy above the deep, was a new story, the scene like a parable. We learned the way a single body drifts from the ring of others gathered round the raft, the cold rubber, the quiet lapping against us, the moon's cold teeth. View from Adobe House, New Mexico, 1931. From a wide and open hole, I lean back against the scutcheon, watch a sea change dawn. In wide and open space, the sun's bladed trace skims a glossy frost off the mesa. Recollections and ideas from the Book of Wind and Brass. In the Book of Wind and Brass, Japan's companion volume to Tibet's, a dead child should be buried with a nut closed in each white hand. So generations later, when her story is told still, the listener can wander through the trees to find the plot, framed like a little door beneath touching limbs, beneath a dark tree roof canvassing the light, each leaf like a black flicker, the fidget of a spade, or what might be inside the quiver on the surface in an old man's water bucket when he thought he saw her there. So he turns quickly, his foot catches the ben with his zori or his gita. The book is quiet on the subject of what to do when the dead do not keep silent. This is the idea of wind, combined with the idea of doing nothing. I trail off. Guess what kind of nut grows best from human hands? This is the idea of brass. This one is called Oklahoma, and it's about looking at a painting and playing music. Above the organ hangs this winter scene by Norman Rockwell. The town is trapped in duffel coats and post-war cars, chilled into a moment by a landscape street dressed with egg blue light. Today is like every day and is the closest she will get to snow since she left Oklahoma. Why does she hang it on her wall if she hates the scene? The sun above Coronado Bay cast those Navy ships at port in glares as white as winter. They lived there when they knew what love would take from them, and ships had horns which blew like Miles Davis and took him out to where there is no song, no scale to pull what happens in a war together. From her couch, she stares between waves of what she remembers almost. When I sit on the black leather seat and step on the brown petals sticking out like roots from a squat stump, nothing unearths but one deep E. I search the keyboard for the working keys. Play what I hear in my innermost ear, somewhere in the landscape of myself, and draw slow scales and basso continuo while she asks, what melody is it? Nothing, Grandma, I tell her. I made it from my imagination, like a painting, but in sounds. She shrugs and tells me something she was told about practice. I want to tell her, see, these ones do not work. I want to tell her, look what I can do with a broken thing. Instead, I scoot the bench, return it to the stump, and walk to where she points her twig-like finger. She counts in notes that sound like wind from two directions, fighting it out in a broken pipe. She tums and tums her way around her slowly departing mind. What she wants to say joins the absent words filling up this house. We look at the wall together for a minute. Now she wants me to see the red car, the one which is not there, the one like her father's, in the back near the farmhouse, away above the street, parked beside the girl who has turned her face into a sailor's breast like a small bird hides in her own shoulder. The one between the snow-topped roof and the frame. And I do not see it, but the light moves shapes across the wall, and I hear a sound of some tree-framed road where the last bite of sun eats the scene clean away with its glint, scent from a little water trapped within two deep tracks which lead from a story off the edge of what we say. Thank you.
And we'd like to end up with a pair of tunes called The Skylark, and the second was Happy to Meet and Sorry to Part. And we are indeed. And I would like to thank very much all those who were involved in this very nice event, it seems to me. It's a lovely atmosphere, encapsulates the spirit of the back room. Anne Marie, Paul Mattern, all of you really, and the students and the poets and the writers, the singers, the whatever. It's lovely.